She didn't scream. She didn't plead. She stepped forward and struck him. Her fist shook, but his body didn't. No flinch, no defense. Just a still figure in red, eyes closed, head bowed, like a man taking communion, but receiving a wound instead. She didn't hit him out of rage. She hit him because he never looked back. And this story, it's not about what she did. It's about what he chose not to. No one stopped her. Not the guards, not the tourists, not even him. She struck. He stood still. It looked like a slap, but it felt like a confession. And he didn't flinch. But not because he was brave. He just stood there, like silence had always been his armor, like the wound had always been waiting. Some watched in shock, others in silence. Phones rose, fingers trembled, but no one said his name. She wasn't crying, not in the way we think. Her hand shook, yes, but her grip on his uniform was steady, like she wanted him to feel the weight of being remembered. And somewhere, beneath that golden hush, there was a story no one had asked him to tell. Until now. They called him Sergeant Alistair Redford. 43. No wife, no children, no voice. He hadn't spoken since Kandahar. Not a word. Not even to his commanding officer. And yet, he volunteered for ceremonial duty. A role where silence was not a burden, but a rule. His red tunic was flawless. His boots, mirror polished. But tucked inside his left glove was something no one noticed. A bronze medal, old, faded, with initials that weren't his. She looked down once, just once, and her grip tightened. Was it recognition or accusation? He didn't look back, didn't speak, didn't move. But in that one breath, something shifted in the stillness. Not in the crowd, not in her, in him. And whatever it was coming next. She didn't speak, but her fingers trembled, not with anger, but something quieter, something older. She released his coat, not all at once, but slowly, like letting go of someone who never held you back in the first place. Her eyes never met his, not fully, but her lips moved. 3 words, no sound, just breathe. And his left thumb, the one nearest to the metal, twitched, just once, as if memory had a pulse, and it found its way back to his hand. The crowd leaned in, phones rose higher, but the air stayed still. She stepped back, only half a step, as if to say, I'm done. But she wasn't, and neither was he, because what comes after silence is not noise. It's the weight of what was never said. It should have been a formality, a duty assignment, a file signed and stamped. But her brother's name was on that same deployment manifest. Kandahar. Same date, same unit, same casualty list. Except he wasn't listed as a casualty, not officially. The paperwork said unaccounted. 3 syllables, clean, empty. Enough to make a funeral feel like fiction. She had found the original report. One sentence stood out. Last seen, within proximity of Medical Sergeant Redford. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even a statement. But in grief, ambiguity is a wound that never stops reopening. That's why she came. Not to blame him, not to mourn, but to ask, without asking, what silence was really hiding, and whether silence was ever truly neutral. The air had changed. Not louder, not colder, just different. You could hear it in the way her breath shortened, in the way his glove creaked, just slightly, as his fingers curled inward. Not a fist, not quite, but something held tighter than usual. His left eye, barely visible beneath the brim, twitched once, then stilled. She wasn't crying. but her throat moved, dry, uneven, like someone swallowing something she'd carried too long. A wind passed, light, but it lifted the hem of her coat, just enough to reveal the envelope. Brown, unmarked, folded at the edge like it had been read 100 times without ever being opened. And in that flicker, between glove and paper, between breath and silence, the weight of memory grew heavier. But still, neither of them spoke. The envelope wasn't hers, and it wasn't new. It had creases older than her grief, ink that had faded before she ever found it. Inside was a letter, written by him, by Redford, weeks before the blast. A letter to her brother. No orders, no report. Just a page of regret. A warning. A plea. "Don't follow me," he wrote. "I'll take the northern ridge. You stay behind. Promise me." But promises don't survive explosions. And neither did he. Only Redford returned. And when he did, he didn't speak. He didn't write again. He just carried that one letter in silence. A letter never meant to be read by the living. But now, it was in her hands, and everything she thought about guilt began to shift. He never opened the letter after the war. Not once. But he never let go of it either. It traveled with him, from base to base, from barracks to silence. There were rumors, of course, about why he stopped speaking, why he stopped sleeping, why he requested guard duty, the most voiceless role in a country that never asked questions of its statues. But it wasn't the letter that broke him. It was the promise. He'd sent her brother north, to safety, to survive. But her brother, being who he was, followed anyway. And Redford knew. The moment he saw the ridge collapse, knew without confirmation, without command. And in that moment, he didn't scream, didn't run. He just stood still, as he does now. Because sometimes, the body survives what the soul cannot. And the uniform becomes the tombstone you have to wear every day. She stepped forward again. No fist this time, no accusation, just the letter, held in both hands, like an offering, like a question with no punctuation. He didn't reach for it, didn't even look, but his jaw tightened, not in defense, in memory. A child nearby whispered something. The crowd held its breath. Phones still raised, cameras still blinking, but no one moved. And then, her hand touched his chest, flat, open, right above the medal he never wore. He didn't pull away, didn't flinch, but one tear, only one, fell from beneath his right eye. Slow, straight, clean. It landed on the back of her hand, and she didn't wipe it. She let it stay, like a name never carved into a stone. And for the first time, his left hand moved, not to stop her, but to hold the letter closed. He didn't speak. He never would. Not because he couldn't, but because words were never built for certain kinds of sorrow. He took the letter with both hands, held it, gently, as if it might tear from memory alone. And then, he bowed. Not to her, not to the crowd, but to the space between them, to the silence that had kept them apart for far too long. The guards didn't intervene. The tourists didn't clap. The moment was too full to be filled with noise. Behind him, the shadow of his hat fell across the cobblestone. Long, still, heavy, and as the sun dipped, he stepped back into formation. Hands at his sides, eyes forward, posture perfect, but something in his stillness had changed. It no longer looked like duty. It looked like mourning he'd learned to carry upright. There are moments when doing nothing is not weakness, but wisdom. Moments when silence is not absence, but presence. You see, as we grow older, the world begins to demand louder answers, quicker reactions, stronger stances. But life isn't always a courtroom. It's a quiet corridor of choices we carry alone. Sometimes we do not speak because we are guilty. Sometimes we stay silent because we've suffered enough. And sometimes we stand still, not because we have no words left, but because we've already said everything that mattered through what we did not do. So if your hands are tired, if your voice feels small, if your regrets still whisper in the quiet, remember this: you are not measured by how loud you respond, but by how deeply you endure what no one else sees. And in the end, the most powerful truths are often carried by those who speak the least. There are moments when doing nothing is not weakness, but wisdom. Moments when silence is not absence, but presence. You see, as we grow older, the world begins to demand louder answers, quicker reactions, stronger stances. But life isn't always a courtroom. It's a quiet corridor of choices we carry alone. Sometimes we do not speak because we are guilty. Sometimes we stay silent because we've suffered enough. And sometimes we stand still, not because we have no words left, but because we've already said everything that mattered through what we did not do. So if your hands are tired, if your voice feels small, if your regrets still whisper in the quiet, remember this: you are not measured by how loud you respond, but by how deeply you endure what no one else sees. And in the end, the most powerful truths are often carried by those who speak the least.